Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another Clearing My Head video. This one's going to be about, I don't know really, it's still going to be kind of world problem based, probably like a bit of knocking on capitalism, I guess. Obviously there's pros and cons to every system, but I feel like there's a lot of cons to this one, so we're going to just jump in and swap onto the old thing with Bobbity Bob and make sure that this is visible this time, because obviously we've had that issue in the past. Zoom out, is that? I think that's alright. Is this visible? It is indeed visible. We don't want that. We don't want that. Let's get that sorted. In fact, we need to. Is it Kandara or Calibri? I don't know. Who really cares? But yeah, I'm just gonna. I've got loads of phone notes still, basically, and I'm just gonna go through them kind of haphazardly, shall we say, and not necessarily in order. Last time we did the chronological order. This time, just whatever. So this is from today, which is the 20th of May, 2024. And at the moment, we've obviously got the profit incentive. I think changing that to the pirate incentive would be very, very beneficial. Which is the improvement incentive, which is the II incentive, and hence the pirate incentive. Because at the moment, for a start, profit incentive, the old constantly trying to grow, and constantly trying to grow means constantly trying to, or constantly burning through resources. Of course, that depends on what sector is growing, but that does have some serious issues. But also, because at the moment, companies try and give consumers as little as possible, as long as they can keep them coming back and spending their money. And obviously they try and do this to cut down costs and maximize profits. Whereas if we can maneuver our way from the profit incentive to the pirate incentive, whereby we're just trying to improve kind of people's lives via providing them with good products and good services, then companies won't be trying to give consumers as little as possible. As long as they keep coming back, they'll be trying to, actually provide a good service, and just constantly trying to improve that service. So I think that's key. Obviously, some people are extremely motivated by money, which can be a good thing. It means that some people will put a lot of time and energy into society. Essentially, the problem with it is that if you're extremely motivated by money, even though you're putting a lot of time and energy into society, what tends to be the case, or what tends to happen is, the goal is to kind of essentially burn through a ton of resources. Well, that's not really the goal, but the goal is to live a lifestyle that is extremely demanding. Typically, people who are very incentivized by money end up, having a giant house, tons of land, or many houses, like private jets, mega yachts, not talking about anyone specific here, their own islands, etc., etc. They're constantly trying to, or not trying to increase their demand, but the lifestyle that they aim for tends to be extremely demanding, which obviously drains time and energy off other people, because other people have to then spend that time and energy pandering to that lifestyle and providing that lifestyle for that person or persons. So there is even though this can be a good thing, typically the people who are extremely incentivized by money do also burn through a ton of resources, or will burn through a ton of resources, assuming they make the money that they're attempting to get, and make the profits that they are aiming for. So that's number one. And we've got democratization. There's only three things on this thing. Democratization of the workplace. I think this would be very beneficial at the moment. Obviously, at the moment, we basically live supposedly within a democracy, but every workplace is essentially a kind of mini dictatorship, whereby one or just a couple of people have all this kind of say, and the rest of the people that work in that workplace basically have no say whatsoever. And if they do suggest good ideas, typically they won't be rewarded for those ideas. Those ideas will just be implemented, and the person will still remain on the same wage. Whereas democratization of the workplace will or should help with self-worth, because obviously if someone lives a life whereby they spend the majority of their time, which we do, we spend the majority of our time at the workplace without any kind of sense of autonomy or freedom, that can degrade self-worth. Speaking of sense of freedom / autonomy, autonomy, which should facilitate contentment, or at least better contentment, which should in turn facilitate less burning of resources. I can't spell facilitate. Facilitate. Because when we're content, we tend to not aim to consume as much. Consumption is essentially not in its entirety, but a lot of times a coping mechanism for discontentment. And finally, the third thing, universal basic income, UBI, as it empowers the disempowered by providing them with leverage, which should reduce financial stress and facilitate, again, contentment, which should, again, in turn, facilitate less burning of resources, as above. And speaking of less burning of resources, obviously with the profit incentive, a lot of people in kind of a lot of capitalists, if we were to use the stereotypical definitive kind of tribalistic label there, which I used quite frequently in that video on World Peace Notes, without mentioning that actually kind of falls under that, because I mentioned the stereotypical definitive labels thing and then proceeded to use them. Does help in terms of it's a bit of a shorthand, but it does have problems, as mentioned in that video. What was I saying? People who are capitalists really, in a sense, maybe they don't think about it in this way, but really want a lot of burning through resources, because the more people consume, the more profit can be made. So the more people burn through resources, the more they can extract in terms of money. So yeah, those are just three things. So that's obviously linked to that. So it's 1, 2, 3. I think those three things, if we were to be able to do them, would help a lot in terms of solving, not necessarily solving, but at least mitigating world problems. Obviously, everything has pros and cons. There are some, for example, potential cons of universal basic income, which is because the majority of people have kind of lived most of their lives, or at least a lot of their lives, kind of under the boot of capitalism, under the boot of capitalists. If they are suddenly given leverage, they might use that to basically do their own thing because of the discontentment that's kind of living that life has caused. And if enough people do their own thing, in terms of, if they use consumption as a coping mechanism, basically, as soon as the leverage is given, the ability is given to do that, then the amount of kind of time and energy that needs to be spent, or directed rather than spent, into society might not be met. So that's a potential issue, although as far as I know, the pilots for UBI have been pretty positive in terms of what's actually happened, so I have to have a look into that. I hope that made sense. That's note number 1 anyway. So that was from today. Let's have a look, and as I say, I'm just going to do random ones, so I'll delete that one. Okay, this was, wait, what? Oh, this was today at 3:35 a.m. Nice. Sleep cycle is going well. So yeah, again, May 2024. So this is about laziness. The irony. And I'll say the reason I'm doing this is because I was called lazy earlier. Was it earlier this week or last week? Somewhere around that. So I thought I'd do a little quick note on it anyway. The irony of calling someone lazy is that it's lazy thinking to do so. At least by the definition of those that are using it. And the reason it's lazy thinking is because they likely haven't, I didn't put likely in my note, but I'll put that there anyway. They haven't put much thought into whether laziness actually exists. And rather than laziness, I actually don't think laziness exists. I think either a person who would be considered lazy, again that's a stereotypical definitive label, but who are considered to basically not put enough time and energy into society, which is essentially what that's used for, to try and describe, either has some kind of mental, physical, and or there's some kind of environmental illness involved. Because I think the vast majority of people want to contribute more than they consume, give more than they take, provide more than they detract from society. So only those with either mental, physical, and by environmental I mean, so what's that being? Environmental being not knowing whether contribution outweighs consumption. So that's a form of kind of systemic or environmental illness. Give outweighs take. Because obviously contribution and consumption both have butterfly effects, which kind of are very difficult to get to the bottom of in terms of, does my contribution quantitatively outweigh my consumption? But yeah, so I don't think laziness exists. I think it's some form of illness, essentially, that's going on there. Delete. That was just today as well, at 3:18 a.m. So yeah, May 2024. How do we empower the disempowered? Burn through less resources, long term. Short term, this might actually help due to how broken the current system is. Because at the moment, because people require jobs to live, essentially, burning through more resources means there's going to be more jobs. So if people are struggling for jobs, it's actually better in the short term to burn through more resources. Again, another sign that the system's kind of fucked. Whereas obviously long term, if we continue to try and burn through resources, even if it's to aim to help people in the short term, then that's not going to work out too well for us, most probably. Contribute more, though this might actually do the opposite, again due to how broken the system is. So what I mean by that is, if we're in a financially okay position, if we actually if we work essentially more than we need to, and the same thing applies to volunteering, then we're kind of screwing over other people because they need jobs. If they're in a financially stressful position and we work more than we need to, we're taking hours that they could be doing in order to be paid and reduce that financial stress. So again, another sign of how broken the system is, because obviously we want to be encouraging this, not discouraging it. And yeah, same with volunteering. If we volunteer and do work for free, that's essentially doing a job that someone could be paid for if no one was to volunteer. It kind of relates to what I've heard about people working in as like waiters and waitresses in America, whereby, as far as I know, let me know if I'm wrong on this, but they're not paid a living wage by the people who own the restaurant. They essentially rely on tips in order to be able to live okay doing that job. So some people look at short term and they're like, yeah, okay, I'll tip because that obviously helps them. But long term, that essentially keeps them in that position. And it's a similar kind of thing here. Whereas obviously, ideally for the waiters and waitresses, it would be better for the people who own the restaurant to pay them a living wage, and then on top of that, people can then decide to tip. But in order to get to that position, we need to kind of incentivize or somehow create the conditions whereby the people who own the business are going to pay the living wage. And one way to do that is to collectively not pay tips in order for waiters and waitresses to be like, wait a minute, this isn't going to help me survive, and then you've got to try and incentivize them to actually pay the living wage and then tip them after that, once that's that kind of system's achieved. Expand our cock, our circle of care. So using myself as an example, up until the age of kind of mid-20s, I would unintentionally, just without thinking about it, treat certain animals how I certainly wouldn't want to be treated, and how I also didn't treat other animals. So, for example, dogs and cats, I would, be like, oh, dogs and cats, oh, very nice. Whereas pigs, cows, and etc., those that are named livestock, again, another example of a stereotypical definitive tribalistic label, I would, pay for them to live a shit life, a very short life, and be killed extremely prematurely. And I think this helps. Obviously, they're disempowered for a start. But also, the animal agriculture industry tends to burn through an absolute crap ton more resources than the plant side of agriculture. So that helps with that as well. And the fourth is to do what we can to change the system to facilitate the above. And I guess that comes down to politics, really, because we need to check, well, most things come down to politics. Everything's political, isn't it, really? What? And one of the ways I tend to look at politics, obviously the most ideal way to look at politics is to, look at each individual issue, look at what the experts say. Usually the experts disagree, or often the experts disagree. Try and make a discerning decision about, where resources should go, and then vote for the party that does that. But that's a hell of a lot of time and energy required to do that. So a kind of much quicker way, although obviously not perfect way of doing it, is to look at the people that are in charge in certain parties and see what they're like in terms of how much resources they burn through, how much they contribute in terms of time and energy, what their kind of circle of care or sphere of compassion seems to be like. How do they treat others, how do they treat other animals, etc. And if there's someone who tends to not burn through too many resources, tends to contribute a good amount in terms of time and energy, and tends to treat people and other animals kindly, then typically that party will most probably have decent policies. As I say, it's not a perfect way of doing things in terms of politics, but it's a much faster way of hopefully making a decent decision that doesn't require, as I say, going into the debates that all experts have in various fields and trying to work out exactly how much resource needs to be directed here, to all the different kind of sectors and areas of society. Blub, 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 blub. Blub, 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 blub. It tends to be harder. Well, let's go tends to be more of a struggle. There we go. Tends to be more of a struggle to have empathy for those that struggle with empathy. And what I mean by this is, going back to the philosophy of chill, which I mentioned in the previous World Peace Notes video, which is essentially that free will doesn't exist. If we look at people who struggle with empathy, i.e. those that direct some form of negativity towards others because they struggle with empathy, it tends to be harder to actually empathise, interestingly, harder to empathise with those people. So obviously if we see someone who's murdered someone, who insert negativity or has racist kind of thoughts and whatnot, beliefs, it tends to be harder, or at least I find it harder, or it tends to be more of a struggle to empathise with those. I think that's quite interesting. But that's where the philosophy of chill comes in, because obviously if free will doesn't exist, which I don't think it does, those people are fundamentally not to blame for whatever their beliefs are, because everything is a reaction, so including their actions, because their actions are reactions as well. Because we were not in control of the way that our neurology developed. And by the time we were in control, we weren't in control of how we decided to control it. I forgot to do when that was. Did I delete that? I'm sure I've got that kind of thing from a little while back anyway, so never mind. This is kind of related to, I guess, mental health. This was 19th of May, so this was yesterday. 24. Seeing the potential for society, thinking it's being squandered, is a recipe for poor mental health, especially if thought about a lot. So I think this is a problem that I had for many years, which didn't help the old noggin. So in order to mitigate this, we can remind ourselves that in a lot of ways, we've made great improvements to the way a lot of people live, though ideally this should only serve to mitigate the potential negative mental health effects, not reduce, I can't type, not reduce the time and energy directed to making improvements, though doing so might do this a little. So essentially, to strike a balance, Buddha was right apparently, so that we're good mentally, whilst also still seeking improvements to the way society is structured / functions. So yeah, I think that was an issue I had for many years. You know, you see the way that society could be kind of structured and the way that things could be essentially, and if that's vastly better than what it is at the moment, then you can have quite negative side effects on the old mental health. But similarly, you don't really want to, as I say, you don't want to be thinking constantly of, okay, look how much we've improved, because that could make us kind of a bit more complacent in terms of actually still trying to improve things. The stress of seeing a potential not realised can kind of facilitate, I was going to say action, but reaction. Positive reaction, hopefully. And this one's more than likely had more notes prior to this, but never mind. AI potential to exponentially increase systemic noise. systemic noise is a time and energy black hole. Yeah, so that could be extremely bad. And what I mean by this is basically that there's obviously a lot of good potential for AI. I guess related to that is the better the tool, the more destructive the weapon, or something like that. I don't know, off the top of my head. AI could be an extremely useful tool that drastically reduces the workload that people have to put in, and therefore we can spend more time doing things that we enjoy and things that we value. However, it could be extremely destructive, and one of the things that could be extremely destructive is the kind of potential erosion of trust via just pumping noise into the system. And by that I mean people can use AI to just generate crap but make it seem legitimate. They could just, for example, type, make 10 million articles in the same style as insert legitimate scientific article here, but make it on something that's complete crap. Squeaky squeaky. You could be the Earth is neither round nor flat. It's actually the shape of a giant squashed testicle. I don't know why that was the first thing that came to my head, but you know what I mean. Like, people could come up with all kinds of crap. It's the shape of a jelly bean that's been morphed into a slight more pentagon shape via some people with mystical powers back in 4000 BC. Which might not be such a problem for people who are existing now, who immediately know that's a load of crap. But imagine like a few generations into the future, whereby you're born and there's just all this kind of vast array of knowledge, which is actually a load of rubbish. Like being able to discern what's actually right from wrong, what's truth from lies is potentially going to get extremely difficult. So that's that. That's that. Delete. And another 19th of May one. 19th of May 2024. Not 2029. 29th, 24. Gone many years into the future. Don't let capitalists, again, stereotypical defensive label, so people who have capitalist values and reactively engage with them. That's as I say, this is shorthand, but we've got to remember that not let this be used as a kind of divisive linguistic tool. Maybe always find a bit weird there. Don't let capitalists exploit us to an early death. And what I mean by that is because the whole idea, going back to the profit incentive, is more profits, they'll latch onto whatever it is that'll make more money, even if it's providing us with better means to kill ourselves via our vices, providing, whatever. And of course that then leads on to how much can we kind of lean into vices before it's considered a health problem, or considered pathological. Engage with vices, maybe. So what I mean by that is, obviously we all have vices, we all have things that we do that maybe not necessarily the best for us. Mine back in the day was drinking a crap ton, and not just the water. Lovely. But yeah, I used to drink loads of alcohol, But essentially, what's happening there is people are making bank off me kind of degrading my own life and well-being as well. Though that said, there are pros and cons of drinking. I had a lot of good times. But could I have had the same amount of good times without the drink or with less drink? Possibly. But yeah, this comes back to this question, which is the continuum conundrum. Where do we draw the line of how much can we engage with vices before it's considered an illness versus healthy? I don't know the answer to that. Anyway, this is about half an hour, so we'll leave it there. As I say, it's just going to be random notes. Some things will be about world problems and trying to resolve them and stuff like that. And God knows what other kind of stuff I've put in there. So we're just going through the phone notes little by little. But yeah, I hope you have a good rest of your day anyway. Do let me know what you think, whether it made sense, anything you need clarifying. And yeah, take care everyone. Peace.